This is Distant Replay. We're on to episode 5 of Last Chance U. This is a great episode, too, because I think this is the most fun episode we've seen yet. This is the obviously the documentary, the reality series on Netflix. We're going episode by episode, and I was looking forward to kind of what the next step was going to be, but it finally seems like these guys are having fun now, Mike. And like the whole setup before felt like it was just a task and a chore, even though they're winning, nobody was having fun. But now we start turning that corner.
Yeah, up until last episode, you're kind of wondering, all right, which route is this team going to take? Like that miserable team that wins a lot but doesn't get along, or the team that comes together down the stretch? And I think we got a little bit of a sneak preview that it's going to be the latter.
So a few things we'll go through today on this episode. Coach Robinson, we finally get a little background on Coach Rob. Love Coach Rob, so we'll talk about him a little bit. The attitude in the locker room, kind of struggling right now as they're kind of hitting a pivotal point in the season. So what do they do to change that? They go on a field trip. We'll get into the field trip because there's some incredible scenes during the field trip. And then also Malik Muhammad. We get a little insight into Malik and who he is, his background, how he ended up at East LA College. So we'll go into all that today. Again, you can find us online, distantreplaypodcast.com, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram. Please follow, subscribe, share, spread the word. We appreciate it. All right, Mike, Coach Robinson. We finally got a little background. We wondered how he got here because he seemed like a really good coach, right? Well respected. Even Mosley would listen to him during some of his locker room and film room stuff. And he felt like he's got a really good persona. So you're kind of wondering how he ended up as being an assistant at East LA. And we find out he was a longtime high school coach that had a lot of success and then just kind of abruptly lost his job.
Yeah, it was one of those situations where it sounded like some people higher up than him got let go. Kind of a new regime came in, and he was next in line as far as being let go as the basketball coach. And he had a decision. Does he sit out the year and not coach, or does he try to look for another job? Goes and meets with Coach Mosley. They have a 6-hour meeting, and the rest is history. And Mosley makes a point in this episode to say, kind of how lucky they are to have him on board as a coach. And I kind of agree because as they went through, we're talking about a non-paid position here as an assistant coach. So I don't think you're getting an assistant coach the level of Robinson often at that level.
You know what I like about him so much is that he's in this situation where I think a lot of people, he's later in his career, right? He's had some success. This is probably a humbling experience where a lot of people would just kind of fold it up, right? And just have a bad attitude. But he goes to work every day. He does like the dirty work. He does the laundry. He's hanging jerseys on the lockers. He does the stuff that's not getting thanked at all. He's kind of in the shadows, but he approaches things with such a good attitude.
Yeah, and remember, we're talking about a coach that he didn't go into much detail about where he came from. And we're trying not to Google things as we go along. But like the previous season, this guy's coaching a team that's in like the top 10 in the LA area. So that's the kind of like level of high school coach we're talking about here. And look, I mean, I think we both kind of respect guys who may not have the job they ultimately want, but take pride in the job they're currently doing. Yeah. And I think that says a lot about a person no matter what they're doing. In this case, it happens to be, about a basketball coach, but you tend to respect people like that that take pride in what they do.
So I was already excited we're going to have Coach Robinson in this episode, so I was pumped about that. But, immediately right in the top of this episode, we never see games at the beginning. Games always come later on. They kind of close out an episode. But we see game footage here from an away game for the first time early in an episode. And I'm thinking, oh man, what happens here? Like, is this a loss? Like, what's going down to why they're showing this? But what we see is at the end of the game, they're winning, closing out. They're dribbling out the clock. Hyler just kind of, throws the ball away as the clock's expiring. It goes in the backcourt. They call him for over and back, which, kind of a stupid call when it's not even a close game. And I think there's 0.8 seconds on the clock. But then you see his attitude kind of on full display. And as Coach Robinson calls him, probably the biggest a-hole on the team, but the most likable a-hole on the team, which I thought was an awesome quote. But you see this spill over to the locker room where they get back and like they're kind of going at each other, and you can kind of tell they've been around each other too long. They even say that. Things just like the energy in the locker room is just not good at this point.
Yeah, like you said, they're coming off a blowout win. And for Hyler, I mean, I get he's been through a lot. We went through that last episode, or in episode 3 rather, but he's got to realize a couple episodes ago, he went through this whole thing about saying guys who are of his skill set are sort of a dime a dozen at that level, and the little things are what separates you. He knows that. He's got to realize there's college coaches at every one of these games watching him. And when he's saying the stuff he did to the ref in this episode, he's saying it out loud. He's not saying it under his breath.
No, it's clear.
And it's I hope that doesn't end up holding him back because I think in the end I think he's a good guy. But the controlling of emotions is something it's ongoing with any 18 to 20-year-old, right? But he has a big opportunity. I hope that doesn't cost him anything.
I know. I was like, man, I couldn't believe the ref didn't tee him up. I mean, honestly, like the ref had a lot of patience just to kind of let that go because it was relentless, right? It wasn't like one comment. I mean, it was just nonstop, and even into the handshake line, like he's still making comments. So
And personal too,
right,
personal at the ref, not
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So, and again, that's not even good in the moment. But what's that going to do later in the year? I'm sure these refs are involved in these games with these same teams over and over again, right? So what is this? This is going to spill over into another game potentially. So just like a long-term view, he just doesn't have that. Right now, and hopefully that does change. But you see it spill over in the locker room, and they're kind of getting back and forth to each other. Malik Muhammad's kind of speaking up about we need to come together and change things. Heiler's kind of talking back to him and kind of brushing him off and laughing at him. But it's true, like they do need to change things, come together because they do always start slow. At least that's the way it seems in these episodes. And they come, they pull together and their talent shines through at the end. They win these games and they continue to win games. But I think something's got to change. I think Coach sees that. Like, and he has another one of his emotional speeches in the locker room afterwards. But I think they come to the realization, like, all right, we got to just get away from basketball for a few minutes.
Yeah, and credit to the coaches for recognizing that, and they take a trip up to Colby Ranch, which obviously I had no clue what Colby Ranch is. You just know because the sign, the name of the episode is Colby Ranch, and you see the sign when they're driving up there. But this was one of the funnier and eye-opening scenes in this documentary so far, and it was good. The goal of the trip was to get these guys in different environments so they could see each other in a different light, and I think the trip accomplished that goal.
So let's save the trip to kind of close out this episode, and let's talk Malik Muhammad real quick because he was the player really focused on this episode. We got some background on. We've gotten Heiler, we've gotten Hampton, got some KJ, got some of the role players. Now we got to know more about Malik, and a couple things that I thought I learned from this episode. Malik, I think is more outspoken than I thought he was. I felt he was a quieter guy for a lot of this, but he seems like another guy with a good heart, like a big heart, good heart. Maybe a bit of a tougher upbringing just because his mom and dad were separated. Seems like he's got just intelligent parents, and his mom especially seems pretty awesome. But his dad wasn't around all the time, kind of doing his own thing. But he really respected and looked up to his dad. So I think that kind of created a little friction and maybe made him uncomfortable in his life and maybe threw him off, a little bit. But I didn't think I learned anything completely new from him. He seemed like a kind of a typical path to JUCO, right? You just really skilled, ahead of the curve for most of your life, maybe fell behind in a couple key areas, especially grades. And now you're trying to salvage things at the end, right?
And it's kind of similar to a lot of JUCO guys where everyone involved in his life, like that's close to him, whether it's his parents, the assistant coaches, Mosley, his teammates, they're all trying to get him to see what he doesn't see in himself, and what he's not, and that if he just tinkers a little bit of what he does, his approach to the game, not even a skill level, just his general approach to the game, that the sky's the limit for him. And one interesting thing about Malik, I think it might speak to a little bit about how his attitude is at East LA, is they go through the fact that he has like 6 or 7 offers already because he's in his second year here,
right?
At East LA. So I can't help but think, like, if your goal to going to East LA is to get a Division I scholarship, you have 6 or 7 offers, maybe that impacts the attitude a little bit.
The drive.
Yeah. But with that said, we don't know what the offers are. So we could be talking the difference between going mid-major and high major, which is a significant difference, especially if he has plans on going pro at some point.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, the timeline of how this was edited because, like, his dad comes out to a practice and it's kind of getting on to him about, working hard and you need to show effort. Like, you're bigger than all these guys. You shouldn't have a game where you score 2 points when you're playing JUCO and you're 6'9". So I don't know exactly when that was, if this, it's all like chronological or not, because we automatically see him like in one of these games that we see in this episode. He kind of steps up and it kind of elevates his level, and you start to see how dominant he can be. Put back dunks, big blocks, like what you'd expect out of a guy of his stature. So maybe that turns the corner. Maybe he gets kind of motivated and pushed a little bit. But the future, I think, is bright for him, and we do see him have some conversations. But overall, I mean, I think I pull him for him, but I didn't really like the story wasn't super special or really out of the ordinary. I didn't think.
No, it wasn't. No, it was about, they've kind of alluded to some of the issues that he has in past episodes, and I think it kind of matched up with the stuff they talked about. But you mentioned the putback dunk he had. So sometimes the different highlights in these episodes stick out. That one stuck out big time, that putback dunk. I mean, that's what people are talking about his potential. I mean, that was an elite play right there.
Yeah.
And then along with that, just some KJ Allen highlights from this episode were like eye-popping. He's so much – I don't know if we're going to get more of a focus on him. We got a little bit of a focus in an earlier episode, but to me, he's kind of like KJ Allen's at like a different level than like everyone. Him and Hampton are probably the two best when we're talking about college prospects, but I think KJ Allen even a step above Hampton. I mean, he seems like he does everything really well.
Yeah, he's so good. He's got such explosiveness, which it's like a sneaky explosiveness because he doesn't look like he's in the best shape. He's not in bad shape, but he doesn't look like a guy that's just super athletic, right? But everything he does, like, it just seems to catch you off guard. At least it does me when I watch him play. But every dunk that he has kind of surprises me that he's able to elevate so much and get over these guys and dunk on guys. And it's funny because Coach Rob's like, yeah, I mean, people like getting dunked on by KJ. It doesn't bother him. Like, he's so good, and like he's not like a shit talker that. I think guys it doesn't really bother him to get dunked on by KJ. I thought that was fun.
And I'll tell you what, I'm going to go on a Google fest once we finish this to see where all these guys are.
No doubt.
We may want to do a Where Are They Now episode, kind of just really quick.
We might have to wrap
just
it
a
up.
thought that just popped in my head, but the first person I'm Googling is KJ Allen.
Yeah, there's no question. All right, let's get to the field trip. This is I think this is the highlight of the entire series so far is the field trip. Getting out of the locker room, getting to see these guys' personality, getting to see them have a little fun. As you mentioned, they go to Colby Ranch, which I looked it up. It's north of LA. It's pretty good little hike, and even so much so that you're going down almost like a 1-lane road, closing it out to get to the very end of this thing. And it's funny seeing these guys out in the woods camping and stuff. But we'll go through a couple of these takeaways and a couple of the scenes we really liked. I'll start off with one I liked. Of course, Coach Rob pulling up in the Beamer number 1, right, with his own like vanity license plate. That was number 1, and then he's working the grill, like the grill master. He's got the jams, like the playlist. Like Coach Rob is exactly who we think he is.
Dude, so he's even smooth behind a grill,
Oh yeah,
the perfect level of talking to someone behind you, flipping the meat, with the music in the background, just like a perfect scene. Like it made you want to be there. There's a scene where the two coaches are talking to each other, and it made it like, man, I'd love to be hanging out with them right now.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's go into I thought when they get everybody together, break them up into teams or groups, right, and had them go through some of their favorites. I thought that was pretty eye-opening, like their favorite rapper, their favorite NBA player, and why. And I thought Joe was like pretty deep dude. Like I'm still trying to figure out Joe. Like Joe's got a lot of layers to him. And
he does.
He said some things there that I was like, man, this guy is really thoughtful.
Yeah, he went into why he thinks LeBron James is the best player in the NBA, and kind of went into his reasons. And not all the reasons why he thought LeBron James was the best player in the NBA had to do with his on-court playing.
Yeah.
Just about his influence on younger players, younger people, what he stands for, things of that nature. And you're right, man. It's every episode. It's like a roller coaster with Joe.
Even the Drake comments, right? Why was a great rapper, like things you wouldn't think of. He's respectful to women, right? He doesn't glorify drugs and violence. Like all great things, but you just that's not the answer you would expect from anybody in that kind of setting. But I just think you're right. It's up and down. You just don't know what to expect with Joe.
I mean, last episode he's saying he has flu-like symptoms. He's disappearing from the team for 3 days. Now he's talking deep here. We'll get into some other good things he did in this episode a little bit later, I'm sure, because there was some other bright spots for Joe Hampton in this episode, but like a roller coaster, like you said. And I made some quick notes on when they went on their little hiking trip, right when they got to the ranch. All right. They don't know, they can't identify poison ivy.
Of course, yeah.
They find a grave, which they all freak out about, right? They're all making comments about the bugs and how terrible they are. Right. Now we're in the middle of the woods here. And then they randomly break out in like bird making sounds while they're going on their hike. Just like cutting it up like kids or young adults like in a brand new environment, and really kind of really trying to like take hold of it and like enjoy the scene. And I think a big part of that, they were able to do that was because there was literally no access to technology, which I'm sure was by design.
Yeah, those were all great. I'll keep it going with scenes from this field trip because there's so many. Like, the list is so long. Like, I literally, like, this was probably the best half hour. I don't even know if it was a full half hour of the show. But this is like the second half of this episode was by far my favorite. And I was laughing throughout it, man. It was fun to watch. And I thought the impressions of Coach Mosley were awesome. That's like that was the moment where everybody just loosened up, right? When you can kind of take some shots at Coach without any risk of punishment and you let it go and you see everybody's kind of personality on full display. And I'll say Deshaun Hyler nailed it, even down to the voice.
Yeah. All those imitations were good. Hyler definitely nailed it. Good self-awareness from the coaches to realize that this would really lighten the team up and be a good exercise. Good on Mosley, obviously not taking anything personal. None of the imitations got really personal though. They kept it light, and they were factual too. You know, they were kind of like dead on with how Mosley was, and I thought that was a good team building exercise. Looking back on it,
yeah, no question. Anything else from that trip before we get back to the gym?
Nah, man, I just thought, like you said, that was like the highlight of the show so far. That 20, 30 minutes or whatever, and they come back to East LA, seemingly a different team.
Yeah, and again, I don't know how much of this is editing, right? I mean, how much of it is, we wanted to edit the first half to take out the good moments to kind of build to this, but it seems like a completely different team, so much so that everybody's playing better, right? They seem to be more cohesive, having a lot more fun, kind of backing each other up, like much more supportive. Everything's great. Like, and the play even elevates. It's not just all these little things. The play even elevates, it seems like. And they win a couple games, having a ton of fun. They have, like, I guess, what is it, sophomore night? I mean, what would the JUCO equivalent of senior night be? That's what they have.
They said sophomore night.
Okay, it is sophomore night.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
But they have that. They honor those guys, and it's just a lot of fun. I mean, everything seems like it's turning the corner during this. Even so much so that in the back of my mind, though, Mike, I'm thinking this is all setting up for like a heartbreaking finish to the season because of COVID.
Yeah, I know. You know it's coming. Again, I'm not. I know I say this every episode multiple times, but we're not Googling, so I don't know if their playoffs start earlier than the NCAA tournament. So we're going to find that out here shortly, I think, because I think we're only about a week or two away from the playoffs when this episode ends. I thought the interaction between Malik and Joe at practice, when it's basically Malik asking Joe about some of the crafty things he does to get positioned down low, and Joe kind of explaining to him. Now, this is Malik is starting over Joe at this point, you know? So this is like good teammate stuff. This is where you get when earlier episodes when we were confused about people saying Joe was a good teammate. Well, these are the kind of one-on-ones that they didn't have in previous episodes that you see here, with Joe telling Malik how he gains position, and going through the whole process of how to use his body better. And this is the first of multiple times you see Malik when he's one-on-one with a producer, even in an interview, talking about how much he respects Joe. And that's a common thread. People respect Joe's game big time, from the head coach all the way down to all the players.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see. And again, like, it was so much fun. Whose dad was it that was going crazy on the sidelines?
It was Ziegler, the other guard, the other starting guard. Yeah.
Dude, I was waiting for somebody to be like, "Hey, man, somebody get your dad. Go get your dad," because it was up, like, out on the court, dancing with cheerleaders and running up and down the court. Like, it seemed like he was in the coach's box even.
Yeah, and at a college game too. It's not like it's a grade school game or a high school game.
And I can't believe he hasn't been more involved before. After watching this, that was the other thing I was thinking. But
yeah, he was at sophomore night, but that's about it. I haven't seen him in any other episode.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, this is overall my favorite episode by far. I think we still have 4 more episodes? Is there 8 or 9?
I believe there's 8.
Okay, so we have 3 more episodes to go, which still a lot can happen. To me, it feels like we get to the playoffs, and then maybe that last episode is a kind of a wrap-up closing out the season. So I'm curious to see what happens here, but it seems like this team is rolling right now and well on its way. As Mosley pointed, they have the talent. They got Coach Rob. They had all the pieces this year that they maybe haven't had in the past to kind of make that championship run.
Yeah, it seems like all the pieces are aligning. It seems like they're mentally in a good spot here as we head down the stretch of the season. One thing I want to mention, We mentioned the times these players don't have good attitudes, but at the end there was a scuffle in that last game. At the end of the episode, there was a scuffle, and all the players, including Joe Hampton, who was in the middle of it, took the high road and didn't retaliate when one. I think it was Joe it was a cheap shot foul.
Yep.
That he ended up getting committed on him.
Yep.
So important to point that out since we point out all the other stuff.
Yeah. Everything's positive at the end of this episode. Everybody's playing together, backing each other up. We got good vibes out of this one. So
positive vibes.
Let's see what
Absolutely.
comes, pal. Let's see what comes. We'll have another episode next week. We'll recap and go through it. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Check us out on Twitter, YouTube, and distantreplaypodcast.com.